I just saw it.
This is a rowdy bunch this morning. I don't know what they put in water today. The January 16th meeting of the Oregon Liquor Control Commission is about to start. Will you please take the roll?
Yep. Commissioner Kern. Here. Commissioner Floyd. Here. Commissioner Harper.
Here.
Commissioner Miletus.
Here.
Commissioner Posset.
Here.
Commissioner Vaught.
Here.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Here. First item is ratification by commissioners to stipulate a settlement agreements. We'll do alcohol first. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Chair Rosenbaum, members of the Commission. I'm Michael Shine from Administrative Process and Policy and Process, and we, on behalf of the staff, would like to recommend for ratification 4 alcohol violation stipulated settlement agreements. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Anybody have any questions?
You know, I do, Chair.
Commissioner?
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning,
In regards to violation number 1, the inhale exhale smoke shop, right? How did we learn about the business corporation structure change? Was that, I'm assuming, the time of the year it was during their renewals?
I believe that this was brought to the inspector's attention from a licensed investigator who was having difficulty obtaining information from the licensee. So the licensed investigators are the ones who are dealing with structure changes, that sort of thing. And then they needed information on insurance, liquor liability insurance that covered the new entity. Because even though, I mean, it may seem like a bit of a technical thing, if it was the same name as an LLC or whatever it was before, I don't actually know. When you change it to a corporation, of course, the insurance has to specify that the corporation is covered.
And then, so once the inspector came on premises, he wasn't, and this was, I'm just noting, it looks like it was the day before Thanksgiving. I'm sure they were up to their neck. No excuse, but they were probably up to their neck, busy. They couldn't locate the insurance policy. But later on when they did, there was proof that there wasn't lapse in coverage, correct?
That's correct. Actually, the violation was on several dates in May. It was the charge letter that went out around the time of Thanksgiving. But that's right. They were able to demonstrate that there was no lapse in coverage.
Just curious. Sometimes do these things kind of warrant just if there is proof that there wasn't a lapse in coverage, just maybe warrant just a warning?
Well, that's certainly sometimes possible, but the rule does specifically require either that the information be posted or that it be on premises and immediately provided to the inspector. And in this particular instance, in which it required a lot of first investigator and then inspector time before the licensee was able to provide this information, it was determined that it warranted a charge. It's not a big charge, you know. It's a Category 5, as you are, I'm sure, aware. That's the lowest category of violation, but still, we did believe it warranted the charge.
Thank you, Michael. No, I understand, and I know that there was, and I appreciate that there was time involved here. So just a question. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to say that we do exercise that discretion, and under other circumstances, it might have been appropriate to warn, and has been warned and on other occasions.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
I don't like fees, and if it's something that in regards to exhibit number 1, the excuse that it's just a small fee is not acceptable to me, especially if they had for a person in the insurance business, I know Commissioner Reval will agree with me. If they had coverage, I don't care how much time the commission took and they provided it, I still don't get why this didn't go away. I don't get it.
Chair Rosenbaum and Commissioner Harper, members of the commission, there's a separate violation that's a much more serious violation for having a lapse in your insurance coverage. And I think you can see there are actually some cases before you this month and that have that. And that's a Category 1. It's required to be a Category 1 because it's a risk to public safety. It's required under statute by the legislature that be a Category 1. So we're not talking about that violation. Your rules do have a separate violation. So I guess if the commission as a whole feels that it's not appropriate to have the posting or providing proof promptly to an inspector of the coverage to be a violation, then it would be up to this commission to change the rules. It is a important tool for verifying the very important fact that there be liquor liability insurance coverage. And so I think it's a wise rule to have in place, and that's what your rules currently provide.
So I don't want to share this talk about just this case alone, because the other cases involve the way we notify people. I mean, we're gonna start the year off with, again, every month talking about people who don't have a service permit, don't have licenses, and in small scenarios where they could take care of these issues, and especially the businesses across the state, in a timely fashion. This is a great way to start the year off on our side if we're trying to support small businesses.
Chair Rosenbaum.
You know, $660 still $660. It's a lot of money to me, a lot of money to them too. So,
Chair Rosenbaum.
Commissioner?
I guess I look at it from a different position. As a police officer, you're stopped a car. You stop that car. You ask that individual for your license, your registration, and your proof of insurance. If you don't have proof of insurance with you, that's a violation. That's a citation. So when I look at the rules that we have in place, which is designed for public safety, I see this as a reasonable rule, and I'm not willing to change our position for that. You get stopped, you get questioned to prove that you're legitimate in whatever it is you're doing, whether you're a licensee of ours or you're driving a car, you have to have proof of insurance, period. So I'm fine with this procedure.
Any other comments? Well, let's take the roll on the alcohol first, and then we'll go to marijuana. Mr.
Chair, I move to ratify the 4 stipulated settlement agreements as proposed by staff.
Commissioner Curran,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Harper.
Chair, I'd like to take one out, and I'd vote no on number 1, but yes on the other cases.
Okay, I think we can do that.
Take them one at a time.
I don't think there's any problem. The record note that Commissioner Harper, I don't think there's any problem doing it that way, is there? If there is, we'll just take it out.
Just hold it first.
This is why you're getting paid the big bucks now.
So, Chair, I think it's fine to take them one by one, but I think you need a different motion.
Chair,
Okay.
I move to ratify the 1st stipulated settlement agreement as proposed by staff for alcohol violations.
We have 4 of them. Okay, let's do it that way. It doesn't make any difference.
We can do it by name.
Go ahead, we'll do it by name. Inhale,
Inhale,
Exhale.
exhale, smoke shop.
Commissioner Curran,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Harper,
No.
Commissioner Miletus,
Yes.
Commissioner Palcic.
Yes.
Commissioner Hall,
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Yes. Now, does any of the commissioners have a problem with the other three? So we can take those all at one time.
So
I
Chair,
need a motion, thank you.
I'd move to ratify the three other stipulated settlement agreements as proposed by staff for the Mezcal Sports Bar, the Tuk Tuk Restaurant, and Taroka.
Commissioner Kern,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Harper,
Yes.
Commissioner Molinas,
Yes.
Commissioner Possett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hall,
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair Rosenbaum, members of the commission. We have 4 staff recommended and 1 commission initiated stipulated settlement agreement in the marijuana area for the commission's ratification. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Commissioners? I need a motion,
Chair Rosenthal.
Commissioner?
I move to ratify the 5 stipulated settlement arguments as proposed by staff.
Commissioner Kern,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Harper,
Yes.
Commissioner Molinas,
Yes.
Commissioner Possett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hall,
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Yes. Before we go to the next one, I'd just like to make a statement. This commission has spent an inordinate amount of time over the last year and a half, especially on the marijuana cases. And I, for one, am pleased that we're at the point right now that staff has been immensely helpful to us in terms of understanding what we're doing and where we're going. And I think that time we spent was very valuable in terms of understanding where we're going in the future on this thing. So I just want to commend staff for doing a really good job in educating us. So I'm very pleased with where we are right now. It seems to be very smooth.
Me too. Yeah, it's been great.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff also recommends ratification of 2 licensing stipulated settlement agreements as per the agenda. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take those.
So this guy is just what? He's had 5 suspensions on his license. He can't drive. Explain that to us, please. I mean, what's the rationale on this whole thing, that he just can't drive?
Well, the first off, the authority is that the commission may restrict a license when, in the absence of a restriction, the commission has a basis to cancel, suspend, fine, or deny the license. In this case, there is a basis to deny the license application due to a recent pattern of disobeying traffic laws. Commonly under that circumstance, the commission seeks the less serious consequence, which is an agreement with the applicant for the license that, yes, we will grant the license, but we put in a license restriction. In this case, the restriction being that this individual, who is the primary applicant on these 2 licenses, shall not be convicted of driving while suspended, driving uninsured, and you see the rest of the text. They're all driving infractions or violations of one kind or another. So this allows him to get the license, but it would be a Category 1 violation if he is found to have further traffic law violations. So that would then come back as a potential compliance action for cancellation. Yes, the individual has had difficulty in that area. The license investigators work with the applicants, and in this case, licensing has recommended this restriction. The applicant has agreed to the restriction, and under those circumstances, it's based on a mutual understanding. The commission side is that we are convinced that he will be able to comply with this and go forward and do better, if you will, and his pledge to this commission that indeed he will do so and take that seriously.
Mr. Chair. I have a
Yeah.
question on this. It states that the commission staff will run a background check each year at renewal time to verify compliance with the restriction. I'm assuming the way it's spelled out that this is above and beyond what you would do, and I think that there's additional burden that this individual's perhaps putting on. And I guess the question I have for staff then would be just how much in depth, how much time, opportunity cost, you name it, is invested in the background check, or is it relatively perfunctory and easy to do? But if there is a cost to it, I think that would it be wise for the individual to actually bear the cost? I'm not looking to change what we have here. I'm just asking that question out loud.
And if I had really good information for you, I'd give it to you, but I don't know what the cost is. I know that it doesn't take a lot of time to run essentially a lead search, and we have people who are qualified on staff to do that. So the computer brings up the information very quickly. It's just a question of having a calendar reminder to do it and then punching a few buttons into the computer.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the cost associated is. I don't have that. We could get that information to you.
Thank you.
I'm not gonna second guess you on any of this, because we read this thing cold. And we don't have the background of the staff. But you read this and you say to yourself, this is a serial entrepreneurial violator. I mean, I don't know what term you want to use, but this person has some problems following directions in the law. And it seems like it's a convenience that we're doing this, but I think Commissioner Pollack is right. In some ways, maybe it should be at 3 months, or I don't know.
I'm not looking to
We're
change
doing
it.
this cold. I mean,
Exactly. Mr. Chair, I wasn't looking to actually change it.
No, I have not
But my
either,
question, those that are playing the game, let's say, by the rules and doing things just so, in a roundabout way, including taxpayers, are subsidizing some of the actions that staff has to take at times. And granted, albeit small and perhaps insignificant, but it's still there. And your cause to do this is because of actions taken by others. And that's the only reason I brought it up. Food for thought down the road.
I think we're all in agreement on it. I mean,
It's a good catch to have that. I think you need it for what's going on here. I just didn't know if there was any additional burden to staff that should be borne by the individual that caused this. That was my only thought.
I have one last question on this, not so much on this one, but let's say this person violates his agreement. Will it come back to us, or will it just automatically, will we have an opportunity to see if he violates this or not, or we'll never know about it in the future?
Chair Rosenbaum, member of the commission, that would depend on
If he
the
wants to
disposition. I mean, if there were a report written that this had been violated, it would likely result in a charge letter going out from AP&P. And if the individual defaults, for example, and the default final order is entered, that's something that's delegated to the executive director to sign, and so you'd never see it. If it were resolved through settlement, you'd see it in this same format. If it were challenged and went to a hearing, you would see it in the form of a proposed order and a request for a final order in front of you. So it just depends on how it was disposed of.
So would it be proper to ask Steve that if this actually comes to an executive decision without coming back to us, that we can notify the board of that? The commission of that?
Yeah, we will endeavor to do that if it comes back, or we'll have to figure out how we track it, right, to get it to you when it happens, but we work with APMP to make
Can
sure
you put a
we can
flag
do that.
on this
Yep.
one and just say, if in fact that happens, that the commission will at least be apprised of it?
Yes.
Okay.
One quick question. This is just a business question. From my understanding, this company is a corporation, right?
There are two different corporations because there are two different applications, but yes, they're
Okay,
corporate applicants.
so say for instance, at the end of the year, they have a corporate vote and he's no longer president. Would this still pertain? Would this issue here still be a part of this case?
Well,
if he's not a part of the corporation.
That would be a change in business structure such they would have to come back to us for license evaluation at that point, and they do have an opportunity to request in connection with such an approval that the restriction be removed.
Because they are a corporation, so.
Because it's a corporation, right, but it's a small corporation, there's really one member.
Well, you can add one and then make him president. I mean,
Well, if that
the issue's gone.
Well, if that were to happen, they have to come back to us for approval of that individual to be sure that they are qualified for a liquor license.
Okay, so when you're a corporation, if I understand you correctly, it's not about the members, it's about the first person who started the business, and the corporate entity. Maybe some attorneys will share with me how that works.
It's about control, Michael.
So-
he's the guy
Who
that's on the
controls it?
license. For, I mean, he could change his corporate entity, but he's the guy
He's the
that,
guy.
that, for our intents and purposes, we're dealing with.
We
So-
have to have a person,
Okay, all right,
even if it's a corporation.
okay.
But
I'm sure
Sure,
some
we'll-
another
Mr.
attorney
Chair.
will figure out something different.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I might recommend when we have some time in a lunch work session that we just go over some of the ways that we use these tools to help us license people. I think there's been issues I've been in discussions about the same kinds of cases and how we handle them and alternatives, but at least you'd see sort of the commonality of practice. The other thing to know here is that over time, with not maybe having any violations, they can ask for a lifting of these restrictions over time because it goes against an automatic,
Right.
license revocation when they accept the restrictions.
yeah, we're not questioning that, but it would be very helpful for you to give us your thinking on that.
Yeah.
So we're more comfortable when we look at this and vote on it. Commissioner?
With regards to the license stipulated settlement agreements, I move to ratify the two stipulated settlement agreements as proposed by staff.
Commissioner Kern,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Harper,
Yes.
Commissioner Melitas,
Yes.
Commissioner Fawcett,
Yes.
Commissioner Revolve,
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're dealing with rules. Who's coming up? Emily? She has.
Good morning, Chair Rosenbaum and fellow commissioners. For the record, my name is Emily Feblis, and I'm the Rules Coordinator for the Oregon Liquor Control Commission. Today, I have one initial action, one final action, and one temporary action for your consideration. Under tab A, you'll find the nested ABA initial action. This action will require that any label that contains the name of an ABA located wholly or partially within the Willamette Valley ABA to list the Willamette Valley in addition to the nested ABA. It will also require specific font sizes for identifying the ABA on wine labels and establish a penalty schedule for violating these ABA labeling rules. With that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any? Steve, you want to make any comment before we do this? There's legal issues, there's political issues, there's a.
Well,
Go ahead.
I will report that I think, and we covered this issue extensively over the summer during our tour. I think the wine industry is working very well together. They're looking at more communication. They understand precisely our intention with the rule. We are taking nominations for the RAC from all of the AVAs throughout the state and organizations, so they know that is underway. If you're in the wine industry AVA and one of those organizations, please get your nominations into us. With the holidays, we haven't seen all the response I think that we need. But otherwise, we are not seeing any legislation yet that would tip the apple cart. So I think we're moving forward in good stead right now.
I want to say I really do believe that the meetings we held last summer were excellent.
Absolutely.
And I hope everybody in the community that we attended we got something out of it. We really did. It was excellent. And thank you for that.
Chair,
Commissioner?
I move to initiate rulemaking on this matter and hold to a rulemaking hearing at staff's discretion.
Commissioner Kern,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Harper,
Yes.
Commissioner Miletus,
Yes.
Commissioner Fawcett,
Yes.
Commissioner Revolt,
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you. Under tab B, you'll find the final action for the 2019 Division 25 Bill and Technical Package. During the 2019 Oregon legislative session, the Oregon legislature made changes to the marijuana provisions of Chapter 845. This rule package addresses both the changes made during the legislative session and technical issues that have arisen during the management of the regulated marijuana program. With that said, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
No questions, but just want to make a comment whenever.
Nobody has any questions? I've got two of them. This is, after a year and a half, this is my opportunity to make a comment on something that happened to me. If you look under the license premise restrictions and requirements, 845-025-1230, it says that clarify that the commission employees must present their agency identification and credentials, but may not be required to present driver license or other personal ID. What happened to me is a year and a half ago, I was in Huntington at a farm, and Huntington happened to be 10 miles from the Idaho border. And there was a little store there that was the #1 retail store in the state of Oregon. And what happened is I was at a farm and I saw people lined up. And so I went over there and I walked in and I said, I'd like to speak to the manager. I mean, the people were out in the parking lot. They were that far out. And they said, we're too busy, sit down. I finally get a chance to legitimately talk about this without being aggravated about it. I waited 10.
He's building up.
I waited 10 or 15 minutes, and I went back up there and I said, I said, I'd like to speak to the manager, the owner who's ever here. And I identified myself as chairman of the Liquor Control Commission. And they said, too bad, we're too busy. We can't handle you now. So the reason I tell that story is that I think that this commission should have some identification, as well as we're an employee of the agency. And if any one of these commissions want to go in and had the same situation I had, I think that should be corrected. So I'm asking, I don't know, Steve, maybe you or Will or somebody to give us identification as well so that doesn't happen again.
We can certainly do that, and we've done that in the past. Before badges were issued, we revoked, or the decision was made not to do badges, so we can provide you with some type of ID, badge or otherwise, to make sure that you can.
Well, I think Will has a good idea of
Well,
what he
Chair Rosenbaum, I have a badge.
Yeah.
Chair, I have height, and I flipped it. They would have let me in.
I don't think that we need any stinking badges.
Chair?
One other question before we do it. Transportation and delivery of marijuana items, 845-025-770. You're proposing a complete reorganization of the rule, especially on transportation requirements. When do you think that's coming down?
It would be effective February 1, so.
Now, did the state police and everybody else deal with these issues?
We did have a member of OSP on our rack,
Okay.
so they were aware and talked through their issues, so.
I'm just out of curiosity. Right now, if you have a truckload of hemp going across the state or whatever it is, you know, the state police look at it, the sheriffs, if there's nothing they can do about it. Does this change it at all? I didn't figure out, I can't figure out from what I read that it did.
You mean whether they can differentiate between a load of hemp and a load of
Either
marijuana?
that and what kind of law enforcement tools they have.
Well, we do have the physical manifest, so that would be able to show that it was a flower product versus something else. But maybe TJ and Patrick can.
Good morning. For the record, TJ Sheehy, manager of the Marijuana Technical Unit. Patrick can weigh in on the substance of what changed in the rule. It looks more drastic of a change than it is. It's primarily a reorganization of the existing section to make it a lot more clear of who has to do what. To your specific question, Mr. Chair, about state police and hemp, we did hear during the Rules Advisory Committee from law enforcement that after hours in particular is difficult for them to verify manifests. But also beyond that, if someone is pulled over and says that's hemp, they're limited in their ability to verify that statement. We obviously only have so many tools and can only control what's in our system. And only our system is required to have the transfer manifest. But to assist in law enforcement being able to screen out what's from our system versus what may be from another system, we're instituting a 24-hour law enforcement line. And so our call center, which is now during work days and business hours, will be 24/7, 365 days a year for law enforcement only to be able to call in and verify information on a manifest or the licensed premises that happens after
That's
hours.
a big deal. Good.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just add, in legislation that I think will be proposed during the short session, the issue of potentially tracking hemp through a metric-like system may come up. I know the Association of Oregon Counties, Rob Bovet, on behalf, and he works with law enforcement, counties, locals, has an interest in that, as do some of the industry. So we may see something come through in legislation that provides more help out on the road for officers to distinguish between marijuana and hemp by manifesting the hemp, essentially.
That was a big issue. I remember it very well.
So I think it'll come up. I'm not quite sure it's well vetted now, but I think it's emerging and will emerge during the session.
It might be a moot issue for anybody. I doubt whether most of the people in this room understand this at this point, but there's some very serious research being done in Germany and in Russia to create pure CBD in a crystal form with no THC. And I'm just bringing it up because I can't really understand the ramifications of that in terms of the industry if in fact you don't need the growing anymore. I mean, these things are coming down the pipe, whether it's this or something else. So, I always say if you don't understand what's coming down 5 years down the pike, you're in big trouble because there's going to be changes again. So, I mean, this is real serious stuff that's going on in Germany right now. So we'll see. Somebody make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment before to the committee and the commission. I just want to say thank you for the knowledge that you presented and the hard work we put in, not only here at the commission, but working with the legislators to make these rules easy to read for the citizens of Oregon and easy to administer. And I, as one that really want to make sure that everybody can be successful in the cannabis business, marijuana business, they should know what's on the plate. And the same as the chair said, if you don't know what's going to happen 5 years from now, you really better start studying up. So I'm excited about the not the new ruling, but the clarity in regards to what we've done and what you've done. So thank you so much for allowing me as a commissioner to be a part of this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Michael.
thank you.
Sure, could I just add to it, just to kind of piggyback on what Michael said, and specifically regarding the marijuana rules we're drafting, I know that a lot of times these issues don't get attention until we do the final action. I know that staff and myself and some of the fellow commissioners have worked really hard to engage with the industry on a lot of these, taking comments even before the period. I think that from my perspective, a lot of these represent, if not everything the industry wanted, a lot of moves in the right direction to refine our rules, weed out what was unnecessary, but keep what was good. I think particularly on the samples, the transport issue is referred to the circular manifest. That's an important one that I think is going to add some benefit to the industry, as well as the security requirements. The one thing I think we may get some pushback on, but we did work very hard on and engage directly with the industry, was the fee increase. But as directed by the legislature, I think we were very thoughtful in that we took a step back in terms of the initial action we were going to take. And I think that these things are always second guessed after the fact, but just for the record, I know staff as well as the commission worked very hard to engage with industry and try to get us all on the same page. And I think this represents a pretty good job. And again, thank you guys for all that. Thank you all for all that.
Yeah. Temporary action.
Chair?
Do we have to move on this?
Chair?
Do we have to move on this first? Okay.
I move to amend
Oh, we do.
OAR 845-025-1015-1030 1045 1060 1090 1115 1160 1230 1300 1330 1360 1410 1430 1440 1450 2020 2025 2040 2045 2080 2120 2140 2500 2550 2560 2750 2755 2760 2785 2800 2900 3210 3215 3305 3500 40 5045 5075 5520 5540 5590 7000 7030 7170 7520 7570 7580 7700 8520 8590, effective February 1st, 2020.
All right. There you go.
Mr. Chair.
That was the best.
I was going to ask if we could take these individually. Excellent job. I was ducking that motion.
Commissioner Kern?
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd?
Yes.
Commissioner Harper?
Yes.
Commissioner Miletus?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelsick?
Yes.
Commissioner Reval?
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Thank you for prepping me. Thank you.
Good job,
Yes.
Emily.
Thank you.
Thank you. So under tab C, you'll find the temporary action to suspend temporary rule 845-025-0805 until April 11th, 2020. With that said, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
What was that number?
845-025-028. 280.
If no questions, I need a motion.
Chair. I move to temporarily suspend OAR 845-025-2805 effective January 16th, 2020 to April 11th, 2020.
Commissioner Kern?
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd?
Yes.
Commissioner Harper?
Yes.
Commissioner Miletus?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelsick?
Yes.
Commissioner Reval?
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Before we get to Boba, Steve, you have anything under?
Well, we
I
just
don't think
got
we
back from legislative days and had a number of discussions with legislators about upcoming issues for the short session. Particularly had a chance to present, I don't know how many meetings we had, about 30 over 3 days, present the work we've done with the agents on compensation. The plan is being well received. I think they're pleased with our work to cooperatively advance that. So hopefully, obviously they're taking it very seriously, and I expect some favorable action, but people are assessing what we put before them now. Had an opportunity to talk about a variety of potential legislation coming up, briefing members on what we know about marijuana legislation that's likely to occur. So had a series of good meetings. I think we're moving forward, and learned that the wine industry has not yet found anyone to introduce the bill, and everyone's cooperating. So we're thankful for that. Other than that, I would say we may have reason to have a meeting before February. We have some issues rising out of the dairy and milk thing. We have some licensing issues. So I'd like to work with the chair and others if we have a need to call a special meeting by the end of the month or sometime before February to conduct some business that I'd like us to have the opportunity to wrap up before the session. We'll be working through Chair Rosenbaum and with you to maybe advance that if need be.
Okay, why don't you take a minute and tell everybody in the audience about the bill that we're going to be introducing, so that would be a good segue into what Bob is going to be doing here.
So Senator Johnson has sponsored a bill that has 3 things in it important to us. Now, I'll go through all 3 things here just because I think it's important everyone knows the other 2 items. But the showcase item, the issue that we were interested in, is having the opportunity to work at commercializing and marketing the data that we produce here on alcohol. Conceivably could have some, marijuana in the future, but I think with a real focus on alcohol right now, and whether we can work with our partners throughout the country to really create a more meaningful set of data that the manufacturers and others are interested in, that we could create a revenue stream off it that's more substantial. What we have in legislation is just sort of the authorization to get us going. It's not a full program, but it does give us the ability to commercialize our data. This is not about personalized data. This is about the commercial data, the SKUs, the different brands and types of alcohol that we sell and others sell. It does provide that if we did begin to get that stream of revenue from this, that would go into a fund that we could reinvest to offset the expensive costs of our IT modernization. So we hope to earn some of our own modernization by doing this. We've, I think, got the bill in an acceptable fashion for all the administration, and working with them now that it is in an acceptable form to move forward, and happy to be able to do that and getting a good reception, because I think people see it. I describe it as a license to hunt. It gives us a chance to go out there and really put something together here. And to that end, Bob done a lot of great work, and you're about ready to see some of the ways that we can look at that data and make it more real time, more accessible to people, available digitally on mobile phones, and more ubiquitous for our industry partners who live on this data. The other 2 pieces of the bill, one has to do with firmly reaffirming the authority we have to sell liquor to tribes on tribal land at cost plus 5%. We have now communicated with the tribes, sent a letter to them this week, I think people understand that is intended not to change the status quo one iota. It is simply to affirm the practices and the intergovernmental agreements that we have in place. So very important to us that not get disrupted, and I think it's being hopefully viewed in that vein, and we're getting a lot of help with from the Indian Services Commission, from tribal representatives to make sure this is well communicated to all the tribes so that they are not a bit surprised about what we're trying to do here. Status quo is what we're looking for. The last issue really has to do with an issue that we dealt with last session on air carriers. And we made some changes to really be able to allow the servicing center, the airlines of licensee, but we have a servicing center that's used for air carriers out of Portland. We want the opportunity to sell them distilled spirits. They don't compete directly in the market. They actually use trans-pack cases, which are different than the cases that are used in retail markets. Manufacturers don't want to sell us those cases if they're going to the general market. So we need a couple of exemptions to really make this work for us. One is an exemption that we can list that kind of liquor just for the air carriers, and then that we can negotiate the price directly with the air carriers. That'll be, a different pricing than we have across Oregon, but they don't compete in the Oregon market. I think we have substantial understanding from liquor representatives, industry, lobbyists that that's the case, and so I think we got a good support to move forward. But hopefully, if we do this, we'll realize an additional, this is our early estimate, $1.5 million in additional revenue, depending on how we negotiate that agreement on pricing and how that works. So we're looking forward to doing that. Very important bill to us. So takes care of some fundamental issues, gets us going on data, and creates opportunity for us to gain revenue and fixes an issue that would potentially exist on our tribal agreements.
Thank you. For most of the people in the audience, you're really in for a treat right now. I'm serious. This is really groundbreaking system. It's, as Boba said, Boba is our CIO, and I go back many years with him. This is a SQL database warehouse system that is geared towards Oregon and only Oregon. But the bill that we have in the legislature says we want to sell that type of data. So we need a system in order to do so. But in order to really make some significant revenue streams, we can't do this by ourselves. We have to partner with people all over the country. And the most significant and the most obvious partner that we have is NABCA, which is the National Association of Controlled Beverage States. They receive data from all of the 17 control states, and then they sell that data. This system, which you're about to see, is a prototype of what we would like to do in partnership with NABCA. And if that's a possibility, then the whole country is at our fingertips as well. Now, the data for marijuana is something that nobody has, period. There's nobody in the country has any data on that's worthwhile. The only entity that makes sense in terms of all of the states that are coming are the states in terms of the data. Think about this system that you're about to see and understand the power of what would happen if we could take that marijuana data and turn it into, it's all anonymized data. There's nothing in there that's personal. That's the first and only thing you have to say to everybody is that we're only getting commercial data. We don't want to have anything to do with anything that's personal on it because that just doesn't fly. So, Boba, will you take over? And I think you guys are really in for a treat. I mean, this to me is exciting. Go ahead.
For the record, Boba Subasic, Chief Information Officer, OLCC, Chair Rosenbaum, Commissioners. So I will do a short demo of a software solution that we have developed internally. It is in beta, so this is not ready yet for the prime time for a wider audience. It's still under active development, but I will show some of just a few things so people can get an idea what we're talking about here. So this current screen, what you see is a map of all the liquor store in the state of Oregon. You can, if you look on the right side, we can filter this view by various parameters. So we can pick a target specific month, a different year. We can pick a specific district that we have our state currently divided by for our internal operations reasons. We can pick a specific county. Right now we have all the counties showing, but we can target only a specific county. There is also two different heat maps overlaid on this map. So you can tell that each store has a different color. It ranges from green to red. And right now, this is in terms of a total retail sales value. We are right now looking at, it's filtered by default to 2018. For example, this is East Bend Liquor Store. It says which agency number that is. It shows how many total bottles was sold in 2018. It also shows the total retail value for 2018. Also overlaid a different heat map underneath. You can tell, kind of shows the population density in the state of Oregon. So when considering how hot a certain store is, we have also to consider what's the population density in that area. If we want to get a little more information, I can isolate just that particular store by clicking on it. I can then click on a view report card, which is going to take us to another screen, which is going to give us a lot of details. This is on our test server, so it's not as fast as it would be in our production environment. This screen gives us kind of at a glance dashboard of this particular liquor store. It gives some highlights and some kind of high level insight into business intelligence. So it tells us this is East Bend Liquor Store, tells us what the address is. We have some pie charts on the right that correspond to this little snippets, which kind of highlights certain areas there. So it says about your customers. Consumers accounted for 49.3% of the 2018 distilled spirit sales, and licensees accounted for 50.7%. Next category, it says about your categories, your top selling category is vodka. And we can also see in a pie chart how the other categories rank, just to kind of get a quick visual. You see vodka, domestic whiskey, tequila, and so on. It says how many brands you have currently active in your store. About your product suggestions, so you should consider selling Clear Spring grain alcohol, 1.75 liter, which is ranked 189 in the state. Again, I'll drill out a little more about this so you can see what that means. About your SKUs, you had 2,448 active SKUs in your store. Again, in the pie chart, we can get a quick glance of the top four. About your low sales items, you had 182 items that sold less than $10 a month, and they accounted for 7.5% of your total SKUs. So at a quick glance, what's selling, what's not selling, things to think about. The brands, categories, shows a quick glance, the consumers versus licensee sales. At any of these snippets, you can drill down to get a better idea. Okay, I want to see more about my customers. Click down on it, and it's going to take us to the screen. So this is, again, specific to the liquor store that I'm currently looking at, which is East Bend Liquor. You can see that the top sales is McMiniman's Old St. Francis School, $219,000 of sales. So this particular liquor store, and this is the sales to their licensees in the order of sales. You see the D&D Bar and Grill is the next, La Rosa Authentic Mexican Kitchen, and so forth. At any point, I can skip to a different store. On the menu on the right, I can pick a different year. I can actually, let me show you something else. So if I want to drill down more, I can tell that East Bend Liquor sold this much to McMiniman's Old Street. But I can click on it, and that's going to give me another level of detail. Now it's going to break it up and say, this is how much of domestic whiskey, this is how much vodka, tequila, and cordials, again, specific to this licensee from this liquor store. And it's going to show the dollar value of sales. Here on the right side, I can actually go even further down than that. I can switch from major to product. And now I'm seeing the actual SKU sales, the top SKU sales to this specific licensee from this liquor store. So I can see the Sosa Blue Silver, 750 milliliters sold that much, so $13,317 sold of that particular SKU to this particular licensee. I can also break this down if I wanted to see a specific supplier. Again, this is more for probably relevant, a little different stakeholder group. It's also very important to the liquor store, but it could be for a distributor that wants to see different specific manufacturers, how much of what was sold to that specific licensee in that order.
To the distributors and wholesalers, this is the holy grail to a certain extent. They don't have this.
Another way I can look at the data is I can go and look at the categories versus individual SKUs. So this gives me at a glance all the major categories of liquor that are being sold in this store. It gives the rank. So right now we have from 1 to 15. It shows the total sales of that particular category in the stores. It shows average price per unit, a year-over-year growth. Category is percent of the total business for the store, all the liquor sales. Year-over-year growth for the state overall for this particular category, and it's showing is this store doing better or worse than a state for this particular category. So again, different level of data. I can look at a similar type of information for the brands. So instead of looking at the categories, we can look at the major brands for this store. So again, Sosa, Tito's, Crater Lake, Jameson, Pendleton, and so forth. Or I can go down to the SKU level. Right now, by default, we are limiting this to top 10, but just for sake of not getting the screen too busy, I can jump to top 50, top 100, top 1,000, or as much as I want to go. So top SKUs in your store shows that Tito's Handmade Vodka, 750 milliliter, was ranked number 1. Again, we have similar metrics. Total sales we here show number of cases also and number of bottles sold. And again, we have year-over-year growth, average price, better and worse than the state, and so forth. Can scroll down and also shows the code for that particular SKU.
This is a good one.
If we go to product suggestion, this is one of the most volume-wise popular store, I guess, in the state. They sell a lot, so it's not going to be too much. There's actually only one item that they're not carrying that is ranked in the top 200 in the state. But let's say I skip to another store that is not as large. Pick a different store. Here we got a couple of more items. If I pick another one, I don't know these stores by heart, so I don't know how big or small they are. This is obviously a smaller store, so it shows way more items suggested. So this shows state top SKUs not sold in your store. So Jameson Irish Whiskey 175, Fleischmann's, and so forth. It also shows what is the rank of this particular item in the state. So this is number 33, 34, and so forth. It's ranked by from lowest to highest, or better rank to lower rank. It shows average price per unit, and also shows year-over-year growth for state for that particular item. So again, very important business intelligence for management of the store to see if they might want to consider bringing this in. Next report is, we call it the less than $120 items. So this shows items with $120 or less in annual sales for the store. And again, it's showing number of bottles that they sold. So again, this is filtered to 2018 right now by default, shows what's the sales and average price per bottle. So if I'm looking at a store, I might want to think about it and do I still want to carry some of these products? Maybe there is a niche target market that they still want to keep carrying certain products. It could be a very specific products that they still want to carry, but could be a lot of products here that they might not even be aware that they're not best sellers. Might want to think about it. Sales by size. This is breaking down the sales of all the bottles by the different bottle size. So we got from 50 milliliters, 200, 375, 750, of course being the most popular. And if you hover over it, it will tell you exactly how many bottles they sold. So the store sold 22,866 bottles of 750 milliliters. There is no 1 liter. It's a smaller store, so it does not show on this chart. If I pick a bigger store that has 1 liter bottles, that will probably show us that metric too. Next screen is, we call it the seasonality report, and this is a little more complex report. There's various views of data. You can read this report vertically and horizontally. So this is showing January to December 2018 right now. I guess I have this story is in Lincoln County, so it's already pre-filtered to that. It's showing dollar sales seasonality. So if I can, for example, brandy cognac, I can see, and there's a heat map that goes corresponding to that, showing how hot the sales were during the year for that particular brand. And if something is out of the ordinary, it will go down to the red. So this is 23% for vermouth for the month of April for this store. If I hover over it, any particular field, it will show me also the percentage of January sales for that particular category. So you can also look at it vertically and horizontally again, that particular category just versus the entire month of January, or I can look that particular category across the year. Mr. Chair, do you want me to go further into some of the other? Okay.
I got it. Let's open it up to any. Well, before we do that, let me just say this. I'm glad if anybody in the audience got something out of this because it's exciting. But this was meant for the commissioners because we can't do this in private session anyway. So this is the reason why we have the bill. This data warehouse system is just in here for Oregon, but the biggest problem, most of this information, this is the point I want to make. Most of this information is available today by a system that you have to sit in front of a desktop computer. If you can't get data off of this thing any place in the country, you're 20 years behind. Everything has to be done off of this thing. That's the only way it works. So what Boba showed you is a prototype of near real-time information that rather than sitting down and getting basic information, this is the point, and then building a system across this country, there's probably 1 or 2 people in every agency that understands how to build these systems. The large distributors, the large wholesalers, what they do is they have 3 or 4 people working off of the system and then translate it onto their computer so that everybody in the organization then has that information in front of them. What we're seeing here is a revolutionary change in terms of real-time data that's available instantly on this thing. we're going from the 1990s to the 2020s, and while you can be very excited about this, this is only the first step, because then somebody like Boba, and especially Boba, has got to develop this to a nationwide system that you can collect all that data from. And we have to do that through NAPCA if we're smart. And we're very close to them, and we have a wonderful relationship with them. And that's just the start of it. So this is really, you needed to see this, because this is magnificent. Yeah. So open it up to any questions you got.
Just a comment. I mean, I observed this from the beginning, and it's taken a lot of persistence, and I just commend the chair for having the persistence and vision. And there's just a lot of convergence of unique factors in this state, being a control state, having the everything that it took to get here. And I think it's fantastic, and it's very exciting. Thanks for the presentation. This is fantastic.
We're flying with instruments now, is what it feels like. I mean, no longer charting by the stars to a degree. I'm curious, when we look district by district, are there regions, and are there any kind of trends that you might see even by region that come to light? And I'm sure you can get there by this, because if you're this granular, you can always go back. This is just the tip of the iceberg, I assume, of what you're capable of doing.
That is correct, Commissioner. We have a lot of other
I'm not
reports.
going to dig any deeper, but I just, okay, you confirmed it for me. Wow. Well done.
Very nice job.
It's unreal.
I'm so glad that we had a chance to do this. It's exciting. Thank you, Boba. I think that's it, unless anybody has a Commissioner?
In November of last year, the USDA announced final rules for hemp production and hemp insurance for the country. They are describing hemp as a commodity, as it should be, and not a Schedule I narcotic. We are facing some issues in the coming year as it deals with some of the banks in our state, and I want to keep it in our state, still trying to penalize organizations, businesses that do business with this organization, with this industry. And by that I mean, if you're a hairdresser and you're serving the industrial hemp industry, they may not allow you to have a bank account. If you are making revenue from the hemp industry, they may not allow you to get a mortgage. This is in direct opposition to what the USDA is doing and what the federal government has stated. You should be aware, as commissioners, you will start getting contacts or calls from people in your community about the fact that this bank or that bank won't allow us to do business with the industrial hemp industry. This very likely will be one of the largest crops in America in the next 5 years. And if we can't get cooperation from the banking industry, we're going to have serious issues, as it is now occurring. So the USDA has announced crop insurance for hemp for the 2020 crop, which will go in the ground shortly. We need to use whatever influence we have in this state to make the banks understand that this is not a Schedule I drug. This has been approved by the United States Senate, and this needs to happen right away. So whatever influence that we can use as an organization, we need to be ready to do it now, not later, because this is here. So I don't know if you're aware of that.
Steve?
Yeah, and they're in the middle of some rule promulgation on the state plans. I think they recently extended the hearing on the farm bill itself. So with both legislation this time that's probably going to deal pretty extensively with hemp and how it relates to the Farm Bill and plans and state plans to execute under the Farm Bill. We'll see those issues. There may be some opportunity in there, and I just got the draft of the LC of that yesterday, so I really can't describe for you what is in the bill yet, but we'll have the opportunity to talk about that. It may address some of those lending insurance issues as well. As you know, it's we don't fully have responsibility for hemp here, but we cross over with hemp in a lot of ways, and so we are paying attention to that. As I continue to talk about both marijuana and hemp and testing and commerce, I got to tell you, and it's kind of coming from every corner. Law enforcement, some of these crossover issues on transportation, certainly on testing, and testing at the consumer level. Is sort of this notion of one plan, one system coming forward. It's an interesting notion that both national, state regulators are beginning to gravitate towards another. So I'm talking a lot about hemp and not directly on your crop insurance and lending issue, and we'll continue. We'll work on that. And
but it's directly related to the hemp industry.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about people growing hemp. We're talking about you have an ad agency and you're representing people who are involved with CBD. Well, they may take your bank account away from you as the ad agency. We're talking about you're an insurance company and you're selling insurance, liability insurance to the manufacturers. Well, they may take your bank account and say you can't do that because you're involved with hemp. Those are the issues that we're looking at right now. And part of the Farm Bill from 2018 and the final rules of 2019 state that no state nor tribe can interfere with the transportation or movement of hemp, period. That makes it interstate commerce, point blank. And so if we need to use as much influence as we can in this state for the banks that are in this state, particularly banks that are domiciled in the state of Oregon, to follow the federal rules around what they're doing and not harm small businesses who are doing business with people in that industry. So we need to be aware of that, and this is happening. So I'm not talking about people who are growing hemp. I'm not talking about people who are making CBD. I'm talking about everyone else is doing business with this industry right now.
I wish Shannon O'Fallon had not left the room because she's our expert on this and she can tell us precisely if I'm right here. But I think that because the plans are not promulgated by all the states yet and they are still submitting the plan, technically parts of the Farm Bill don't get implemented until they promulgate their final rules. So maybe until the final rules are done that some of the banking pieces in place. I will ask Shannon to give you a call on that, Commissioner. Just so we can see if that has a relationship here. I'm just not sure. I know it is with pieces of the state plan. I just can't tell you on this lending, banking piece how it affects that. I know that the state plans need to be promulgated for the national system to go in place. So parts of like hemp for regulation on the shelves isn't done, so technically all of that is not happening in a legal way today. As soon as the plans get in place and the packaging is in place, it will be. So I'll check on the implementation timeline issues with Shannon here on the banking, lending. But I know I am fully aware they're supposed to be providing crop insurance this time around. So that's absolutely true.
Any other questions or statements or
just a couple comments to Commissioner Revol's concerns. I think I've encountered similar things where being a member of this body, I think folks reach out from whether it's the banking industry, the real estate industry, and they have questions because I think sometimes they see hemp and cannabis in the same light, so they'll ask questions. And again, I've been really appreciative of staff because a lot of times we've got a kind of an inch wide and a mile deep between alcohol, cannabis, hemp, at least on the commission. And so I've always really appreciated the staff's guidance on it. And I think one thing that may help out is I think there's a lot of confusion in the banking industry because whenever there's confusion, there's fear and there's just a need for caution, especially in that industry. And I think having sort of the canned response to be able to, like a FAQ on certain things that maybe aren't necessarily in our purview, but might help some of those industries serve some of those ancillary businesses a little bit more efficiently, I think would be fantastic. And I think it's a great topic to bring up. So on that, the only other thing I wanted to bring up is, and I sort of touched on it before with the cannabis rules, but I've really appreciated the interactions with the industry. I've gotten a lot of comments recently from folks, and again, I've been extremely appreciative of staff and all their engagement and their proactiveness in engaging with the industry. I know that this session there'll be a lot in a very short amount of time, and I think that the overriding theme that I've heard is about cooperation and communication with the industry. And I just want to say, from my perspective, I've been extremely appreciative and impressed with the staff. I think that that's going to continue, and as these sort of discussions continue to happen, I think we're in a good position, both on the alcohol and cannabis side. And again, thank everybody for their cooperation and understanding as we're all sort of moving this ball forward. So thanks again.
You're gonna give us the badges, and thank you both.